getting geared up for training camp. So it's always a whirlwind kind of getting back into it once you get back from vacation.
What do you do with your time off, if you don't mind my asking?
Yeah, so actually I came your guys' direction a little. I went a little farther, but my wife and I got married in Lake George, New York, up in the Adirondacks.
Yes.
So we often every couple of years we try to get back up there. We have a toddler now; he's 3, so try to get him to experience it. So we were up there for like a week. We came home middle of last week, so it was nice. It was nice to get away for a little bit. And now it's kind of back to reality.
That's a funny coincidence. My son has a lacrosse tournament there this weekend. He's there now, and that's a highlight on the calendar every summer.
There you go.
It's about the biggest one I think I know of. I think they have 36 fields or something running lacrosse tournaments all weekend. So yeah, it's a biggie.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
it's beautiful up there.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So Spencer, I think I have a little bit more favorable opinion of the Browns than most, but I'm not sure really what that is to say, because so much of the talk is so pessimistic about them, and that starts at quarterback. I don't know. Can you see? You can say no, of course. Can you see a season where the Browns surprise?
Yeah, I'm curious. As you say, you have a more favorable opinion. I'm curious to see or get a sense of like where your head's at when you say favorable, because I've kind of been talking for a couple weeks now that. Listen, I get it. When you go 3-14, when you have the season that the Browns had last year, when you're one of the first picks in the draft, no one's looking at you the following year and thinking like, oh, this team's going to surprise. No one's giving you the benefit of the doubt, frankly. Mm-hmm. So I understand where all that comes from. But being closer to the situation, on one hand, people could say like, well, you're biased, but on the other hand, I do think like, given how bad that offense was last year, just having a competent offense. I mean, they were the worst team in football last year in terms of scoring touchdowns. They scored 29 touchdowns last year, which is just absurd. Like if they just have a competent offense, an offense that isn't going 3 and out all the time, an offense that can at least, make some games interesting. The problems last year, like any problems the defense had, everyone looked at the defense from last year and said, well, they regressed from the year before, which when you're the number one defense in football, that's bound to happen anyway. But they didn't really regress as far as I think people thought they did. I think it was more so just the offense put that defense in so many bad situations last year, turnovers, not giving them a good rest on the sideline because they were going 3 and out so consistently, giving the other team short fields. All those things, I think, hindered the defense's ability to keep games closer than they tried, but they couldn't do it for extended periods of time. And I think that's part of the reason why you end up 3-14. I've kind of said, listen, I'm not predicting the Browns to be like a playoff team or anything crazy like that, but I think if you won 3 games last year with how bad that offense was, and you get an average offense this year, I don't see why the Browns, with a roster that not so like as recently as a year ago, we were talking about the Browns as a roster that should have been one of the best in football or was one of the best in football. I can see like 6, maybe 7 wins being something that this team accomplishes, and that kind of puts you in, I think, like the middle tier, the middle of the road in the NFL. So I think for a lot of people that would be surprising. Certainly if they were in that wild card picture late in the season, that would be the most surprising of all. I'm not going that far, but I do think like 6, 7 wins is pretty reasonable if they can just have a better offense and the defense is at least comparable to what it was last year and has a unit that can actually kind of complement it better.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the schedule isn't great. The schedule does us no favors here. But, you're very close to where I am. I'll get a little bit more specific in a minute. You did mention turnovers, and with the Bills, we have, the Bills have been so good. Part of their season last year was that they were, I think, maybe even exactly first in fewest turnovers and takeaways. So, I mean, that's going to help. And there is some randomness in that I want to consider when trying to predict this year. The Browns were the rare team that threw more interceptions than they threw touchdown passes. So they were last in the league in interceptions thrown, and they had 4 picks themselves. Last. Fumbles I think are more random than picks, but still, like that has to get better.
Yeah, and there's been a point of emphasis from a lot of the guys on the defense about that. You mentioned the 4 interceptions. What's interesting is I can remember multiple occasions last year, probably like a handful of times, probably like 4 or 5 times, where guys had like a ball in their hands and they just couldn't hang on. Denzel Ward, I think, dropped 2 or 3 of them last year. And he kind of he Denzel Ward's such a nice guy. Like he always jokes that he can be self-deprecating. I think he had a joke at one point about like hitting the jugs machine and trying to get better at catching the ball. And there's always that old cliche about you're a DB instead of a receiver in the NFL because you can't catch.
Yep.
So like that was definitely a problem for them last year. I think they recognize that. You're right about the randomness of turnovers to a degree, but some of that is created by what a defense is doing, and this Browns defensive front is very much going to be an attacking front this year. They generally have been that in the past, but they've really leaned into that even further, I think, with the moves they made this offseason. And so being able to sort of generate those mistakes and opportunities for the secondary guys to make those plays, there should be plenty of those coming their way. They just got to hang on. So, yeah, listen, if they can cut down on turning the ball over, that's a huge step in the right direction anyway, even if the secondary can't. Or even if the defense can't create more turnovers, but certainly both those things trending in the opposite direction than they did a year ago would help their cause in getting to sort of this middle-of-the-road season that we're sort of talking about here.
Right. Spencer German, my guest here on WGR. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off today. So it's fun to try to predict, quote fun, to try to predict how the Browns quarterback starts will add up this year. Like, who do they start with? When does it change if it does? And then does it change again or even another time after that? You got 4 guys here. Do you have any sort of broad stroke expectations for what they want to do? Like what's best case? Or maybe it's a different answer. Best case for this season and then maybe best case for the organization would be something else.
So I think that's two different. I think like what I expect to happen and what I think is best for the organization, I think are two different things. Like what is probably best for the organization, in my opinion, would be starting one of the rookies from week 1, seeing how it goes, and if he struggles, then go into the other rookie so that you maximize the amount of games that you get out of those 2 guys and can really get a picture of, okay, do we have something here? Do we need to draft a quarterback in next year's draft? Because right now everyone's kind of expecting that's the plan anyway with the 2 first-round picks they have, that they'll either trade up and get a guy or they'll be so bad that they'll be in position to get one, and they'll just draft their franchise quarterback next year. But I think it's kind of silly. Like, why draft 2 quarterbacks if you're not going to try to evaluate them the best you can? And I understand, like, there's always that understanding that the team and the coaches, they're with those guys every day. They have the best sense of what they are, what they bring to the table, even more so than we do. But there always is a difference between practice and at the team facility versus in a live game setting. And so I do think that stuff matters. So that's if you want me to answer that part of it, it's like I think that's probably what would be best for the team, just to get a full evaluation. But what I think is going to happen is that they're going to start one of the veterans. My estimation would be that they would probably trade the other one, like the other one becomes trade bait, whoever loses that job, and then they keep the 2 rookies on the roster to start the year, and they have 3 guys to sort of start the year, with the rookies kind of duking it out for that primary backup spot, the veterans duking it out for the starting role. I still feel that Flacco is going to be the guy they settle on when it's all said and done. He basically had like a first-round bye during minicamp. He didn't take a lot of the first-team reps because, frankly, they know what to expect from Joe Flacco. He was here not just 2 years ago. He knows the offense. He knows what they're going to ask him to do. He's a 17-year veteran. All 3 other guys are either getting acclimated because they're rookies or haven't been in the system before, like Kenny Pickett, and so they're trying to learn on the fly. But there is a lot of buzz, speaking of Kenny Pickett, about Pickett and the fact that the coaching staff and the organization is pretty high on him, part of the reason why they traded for him this offseason. So there are a number of people, like if you asked me, if you polled like the mass of our media contingent here in Cleveland, you'd probably get like a 50-50 split on who they think is going to start between the 2 veterans at the start of the season, just because I think there is a lot of hype around Kenny Pickett in that building. But I just find it hard to believe that if their goal here is we're going to try to win while also rebuilding, you have a locker room of guys you got to sell that too. You have a locker room of guys that you're trying to sell like winning to, and I think Joe Flacco is going to ultimately give you the best chance to win it. And frankly, for an inexperienced team, I think Joe Flacco is going to make guys around him better. Like with a wide receiver room that's Jerry Jeudy and kind of this island of misfit toys, young running backs, young tight end that's now part of this conversation. Like you could use a guy like Flacco who I think it lifts guys up rather than Kenny Pickett, who I think is kind of a mystery in that regard.
Yeah, interesting. Pickett, I guess maybe to put it another way, is almost middling it by the Browns in a way that works for everybody. I mean, relative term, but works for everybody, where you've got some experience and it's, I guess, for what they have, passable as an idea that we're trying to compete. And he's also young, so maybe you can fall into a quarterback you want to invest in. I mean, that's a long shot, I would say, but still, it gives you both things, I think. If you're trying to convince the locker room that you're serious and, be thinking about what might be best for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have the right perspective on that in terms of how the Browns are viewing it. There's always the comparison I always use is they kind of view Kenny Pickett as their Sam Darnold, not maybe like player to player, but in terms of being able to revive his career and then maybe earn a contract with the Browns or elsewhere if he pans out.
Yep.
I just think like in comparing those two, and this is where I said like not like apples to apples from a player standpoint, like I just think Darnold, even when he was at his worst with the Jets, like there was a reason he was a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Like he had some of those quarterback traits that you look for. He had some of the things that and you saw a guy that could like stand in the pocket and do some things. It was just ugly and at times not great. I don't think coaching helped him there. And then he got with the right coach and situation. It turned out. I don't know that Kenny Pickett has like those gifts. I also think like Kenny, I think last year thrived in an offense when he had opportunities with the Eagles that was more spread and use him as a runner. And Kevin Stefanski is more of that outside zone run, play action style offense. So it's interesting. There's some different dynamics there. I still think because of as I just laid out, like Flacco makes the most sense, fits the best. But I do see the connection on like why they'd be excited about a guy like Pickett and giving him a chance to kind of revive his career. And they believe that they have the right coaches in place to pull that out of him and maybe have him have that same result that Sam Darnold did this past offseason.
I'll get to the schedule again here, Spencer, because you could put the Browns schedule in a different order and maybe end up in a different place at what the quarterback plan should be. Bengals, Ravens, Packers, Lions, Vikings. I mean, that's a pretty brutal start for a team trying to get anywhere. Like Flacco has his merits. I did say I was more optimistic, I think, than the market when it comes to Cleveland, but they're gonna if I'm gonna be right, they're gonna need to win a couple of those games, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the schedule, we've talked about the schedule a ton here in Cleveland, obviously, and that opening stretch I think is the biggest reason why the team is probably hesitant to start a rookie, because I think they don't want to put a rookie out in a situation that's not advantageous to them having success. And with the gauntlet of teams theoretically that you play, that obviously makes some sense. You want a veteran out there, and also going back to the point, I'm like trying to sell to the locker room that you're trying to win when you start a veteran. I think that also sort of speaks to that a little bit more. But here's the thing too, like you talk about the schedule being in a different order. I actually think. Like we do this every year where we think about how these teams were a year ago and we say, well, hey, like this is a tough schedule because of how they were last year. But year to year, we know like the league changes so much. Some teams, surprise you. Like even a team like the Vikings, which theoretically is going to be a tough game in week 5. J.J. McCarthy's their quarterback now. Do we know for sure that like he's going to be what Sam Darnold was, or he's going to be great? Like there's questions there, right? The Bengals theoretically are a tough matchup, but over the course of Kevin Stefanski's time here, he has generally had a lot of success against Joe Burrow for whatever reason, and they've kind of had the Bengals number to a degree. So I think because it's early in the season too, teams often like weeks 1 through 5, weeks 1 through 6. It's a lot of figuring out who you are. The Bengals, I think, are the biggest testament to that, right? Like, how many years in a row have they started like 0-4, 0-5, and they find a way to dig themselves out of it and make themselves at least a playoff contender at the end of the season? So I actually think, yes, it's tough based on like what we know about these teams that they play at that stretch, but it also might be the best time to play some of those teams, because if a team like the Bengals or the Ravens or the Lions get off to a slow start because they're trying to kind of get their feet underneath them, you are kind of in a situation where maybe the playing field's a little bit more level if the Browns start the year hot, and they can maybe sneak up on some of those teams and get a win. So I think sometimes we blow that out of proportion to a degree. Mm-hmm. I do agree it looks like a tough stretch of the schedule and is probably going to play into their quarterback decision. But I also wonder if this actually maybe works in the Browns' favor a little bit.
That opener against Cincinnati 2 years ago that the Browns won, they gave up 6 first downs. The Bengals could just do nothing in that game.
Yeah.
And, so right. Who knows what teams are going to look like once we get there. With Spencer German, so the Giants are talked about a lot as a team that when it comes to their coach and GM, they have to win. So it's not too dissimilar. They've got Russell Wilson, they've got Jameis Winston, and then they went and drafted Jackson Dart in the first round. They, by the way, also have, it's a harder schedule, which is pretty cruel considering how bad the Giants have been, but it's awful. So I think most people think it's just a matter of time before they get to the rookie, but there is that sense that for the coach's sake and maybe also the GM's sake, they have to win games. And that sort of factors into how people see what the Giants are going to do. Is that, in your opinion, similar to how it is going to go with the Browns? Stefanski's won Coach of the Year twice, I think. Is he under pressure to win?
It's actually a really fair question from an outside market, because I do think most other markets in the NFL, even on a national level, they're going to look at the Browns situation and be like, how is Kevin Stefanski not sort of on a hot seat, right? 3-14 last year, took a major step back with a roster that was supposed to be good. They've obviously missed on the Deshaun Watson thing, and that's where even Andrew Berry's seat maybe comes into question. But what's interesting is the feeling here in Cleveland is that this is kind of a 2-year trial run, 2-year rebuild situation for both those guys. Jimmy Haslam at the owners' meetings in March, he sat down with a small contingent of media and talked about the Deshaun Watson thing and called it a big swing and a miss, were his exact words,
Yep.
And that they have to dig themselves out of that hole now. And it was a lot of the language he used just spoke to or felt very much like he was expressing patience, like he's going to give these guys time to sort of sort this thing out and see the other end of the Deshaun Watson situation and if they can find another quarterback. So understanding what they did in the draft, especially where you trade back and you don't take Travis Hunter, you take Mason Graham, you don't take a quarterback until the third round, that certainly speaks to a team that is or an organization and people internally that don't really feel like they're pressured to do anything or being forced to do anything. So I think they sort of feel like they have a little bit of a leash here. And I think that I'd be shocked if they fired anybody midseason. Obviously things can change, and I'm not saying it's been told to them you guys are safe no matter what. Because obviously, like I said, things can change in a hurry. And I think the biggest thing is if they are 3-14 again and Kevin Stefanski just loses the locker room and guys are quitting on him, that's the easiest way for any coach to get fired. So yes, there's a reason to put Kevin Stefanski in the hot seat and say he can't have a terrible season because then you just never know. But if he at least has a season like we've talked about, gets to 6 or 7 wins and maybe exceeds what the Vegas number is and what the expectations are, I think it's pretty fair to say he's back next year, Andrew Berry's back next year, and they get kind of one last year to get the quarterback situation figured out and get this thing back on track in a sort of quick 2-year rebuild that they're sort of looking at right now.
Yeah. We both know how it's based on expectations. If the Browns win 8 games, you could win a Coach of the Year for a third time.
Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
Beat the over-under by the most, and you're the Coach of the Year. Congratulations. Just a couple more quick ones for you, Spencer. I wonder if you think there will be what do I want to say, dead cat bounce? Maybe not. If with Deshaun Watson not around, will the team be better for it in a sort of an emotional way, or maybe it wasn't that bad for me to think that would happen?
It's a fair question. It's hard sometimes to get a read because I'm somebody, I'm sure you're the same way. You can only trust so much that's said at press conferences. And every time they talk about Deshaun, Kevin's talked already throughout the spring about how Deshaun's very much involved in the quarterback room. He's working with the young guys. He's, talking to them, sharing some things. That became a big point of contention here in Cleveland among fans because they were like, do you really want Deshaun Watson mentoring young guys? I would say this, listen, he still at one point was one of the best quarterbacks in football. He still can enlighten some experience and some things that he's seen throughout his career from a football standpoint, and so I think that's fair. So it's not that I don't think within the locker room he's hated by people. Mm-hmm. I do think though and there were some comments made by Joe Bitonio and even Jack Conklin at the end of last season about how they leaned too much into the building the offense around one person and not what they were good at. And I think that kind of spoke to maybe some of the feelings in the locker room that they thought it was too much about Deshaun and it kind of got away from what they did best. So I do think there would be a little bit of a relief once he's kind of gone. And I think it's also just the natural feeling when somebody who brings a lot of attention and a lot of negative attention at that to the team is kind of out of the picture. But right now everyone's kind of putting on a happy face Everyone's kind of just playing the game. I've kind of compared it to a marriage where the people, the couple staying together because they have a kid and they want the kid to get to college before they like break it all up and, ruin the kid's life or whatever. They're just kind of like putting on a happy face. They're being nice about it, being cordial about it until they can sort of split up. And I've kind of predicted, I think that happens at the end of the season or next off season rather, because you can spread out the 2 cap hits if you make them a June 1st cut over 2 years and it's like 50 something million per, which isn't the end of the world of a cap hit to eat. But others, I think, maybe say it would be another year beyond this, so we'll see. But, yeah, for now, it's kind of just playing the game, and we'll have to see how it all sort of shakes out.
Watson led the league in passing yards 5 years ago, 2020, the COVID year. Seems like a lot longer ago when that would have been the case. One more quickly, Spencer. Do you have an Elijah Moore take?
Yeah, I think Elijah Moore is severely underrated, I guess is maybe how I put it. I think he I think he got a bad sort of situation here in Cleveland when he got here. There was a lot of hope that he could be sort of like that number 2, number 3 role for this team with both Amari Cooper the first year when he was first here, and then last year with Amari Cooper as maybe the number 3 guy and Jerry Jeudy, and then when Amari got traded to Buffalo to you guys, I think they kind of thought he could do a little bit more, and I think you saw some of the best of Elijah Moore when he had the competent quarterback play, frankly. Like when Joe Flacco was his quarterback at the end of 2023, he put up his best numbers here with the team, and I think he had some similar stats last year when Jameis Winston was under center, a guy who could actually throw him the football and find him. So I think with Josh Allen, he has a legitimate chance to really, really get kind of bounce back and put himself in a situation, maybe get a big contract. That's a great situation for him. I think he kind of flies under the radar, especially being in Cleveland with a bad quarterback situation the last couple of years. But I think he didn't get a fair shake here because I do think he's a talented player.
Very good. We're all hoping you're right. Spencer, you gave us a lot of your time today. Welcome back to work, and we'll talk again maybe around the time where the 2 teams meet, I think in December.
That is right. Yep. We'll plan on it, and I appreciate you guys having me on as always.
You're welcome.